Yeah, I've spent a little time in this church from here and there. I'm usually right up there in the choir loft at 11 o'clock. So we are here to talk about end-of-life decisions. And I understand in the staff meetings this is referred to as the death class or to dust you shall return class. So I've actually taught this class or led this seminar, I think 10 years ago or so was the last time I did it. But we're going to talk about issues that I dealt with in my 40-year surgical career frequently. I also was asked to be and served on the medical ethics committee or institutional ethics committee at St. Francis Hospital when I spent time there. You would hope that you and your loved ones would never be the subject of the institutional ethics committee deliberations, because that is where issues go that need to be decided, where there's a conflict between what is perceived by the family or the patient's wishes and what the institution will allow, when there's a conflict between those two. Now, to avoid those conflicts, we need to talk about, in fact, we need to do something about end-of-life issues before they become end-of-life issues. In other words, now. Do it now. A little bit of forethought, a little bit of communication now with your physician, your attorney, your estate planner, and your family, and perhaps your pastoral staff, and make decisions now, put documents in place now that will solve a lot of potential problems at the end of life. Now, these end-of-life problems are, you probably won't deal with them, but you could. And if you have to deal with them, it's a lot better to do it now than later on when you have a loved one who is unconscious, unable to speak for him or herself, and yet serious decisions need to be made about either continuing care or ending care. Now, does everybody have a handout? Okay. I'm going to go through this handout briefly, and it's going to somewhat match my PowerPoint slides, hopefully. And hopefully I can get this to advance. Yay, first step. Good. So here's sort of an agenda of what we're going to talk about. Faith perspectives on end-of-life planning. One word about that first line. You know, we're all terminal from the day we're born. We're all terminal from the day we're born. How close you are to your end of life, you don't know. But I don't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow, neither do you. But it's important that we realize that planning ahead is an act of love and stewardship. You know, we are taught in our faith that our bodies are our temples, and that we are to respect life almost at all cost. And yet the reality is we're all going to die, and we need to think about those transitions. Thinking about those issues in advance, it will really serve you well in the future. Making difficult medical decisions in advance, I want you to understand the legal tools that are used to help with those decisions. I'm not an attorney. We have several attorneys in the room. I'm on thin ice here, but and then we're going to talk about advance directives, do not resuscitate orders, durable healthcare power of attorney, and the newest form, which is the POLST, or the physician orders for life-sustaining treatment. And we're going to talk about the differences between all of those. Darn, don't do this to me. Okay, let's talk about faith perspectives a little bit. Christian beliefs about life, death, and stewardship we're taught that life is sacred, and we maintain life, we continue life, we support life almost at all costs because it's a divine gift from God. And yet we know that death is a transition. We believe that it's a transition between life on earth and a heavenly life. Stewardship of our bodies, we are called to steward our bodies, souls, preparing for those spiritual journeys. Now, I told you I served on the Institutional Ethics Committee. Believe it or not, physicians abide by a set of ethics. These aren't business ethics. These are medical ethics. And like I said, most hospitals, especially faith-based hospitals like St. Francis, St. John, will really force that preservation of life, sustaining life at all costs, unless there are legally directed directives that limit or allow limitation of the care being provided. But this has to be done in the context of these 4 principles of medical ethics. What do I mean by that? Number 1, and most important, is patient autonomy. Every patient has the right to direct his or her care. Gone are the days of 50 years ago when the doctor patted you on the shoulder and said, there, honey, I'll take care of you. Trust me, I'm a doctor. The patient is now not only encouraged, but protected in his or her right to direct his or her care. Now, for that to be preserved at the end of life, one has to either be conscious to be able to direct those decisions with the care team, or you have to be of sound mind to be able to do that, or you have to have directed someone else to make those decisions for you. But that's what guides all of this, patient autonomy. You have the right to direct your care. The second principle is justice. We treat everybody the same. Everybody has the right for the same care without discrimination, one versus another. The third principle is beneficence, which means I am to do, as a physician, I am to do good. I am to do what is best for that patient, as opposed to non-maleficence, which means I'm to do no harm. Those are the 4 ethics that guide all of this that we're about to talk about. Sorry, guys. Come on now. Okay. I'm having a little technical trouble here, but we're going to push on. The importance of preparation for your loved ones. Has anybody had a situation where a loved one is in the hospital either unconscious or unable to make a decision for his or her care at the end of life? Yeah, it's troubling, isn't it? So we can get around all of that by the legal documents that we're going to talk about here. But we must honor the wishes of the patient when at all possible by making difficult medical decisions in advance. Now, the documents that make this possible, first of all, is the Advance Directive for Healthcare. In your handout, there's an example of an Advance Directive and the instructions. It's page 3, and the instructions that surround the Advance Directive. This should be initiated by a family member or a patient when he or she is still able to make those decisions. It should be directed, it should be implemented with the help of a physician or a physician's assistant or a social service at a hospital or an attorney. There are certain requirements that make that document legal. It has to be witnessed by 2 adults over the age of 18 who are of sound mind. But in this example of the advance directive that I've included here, it includes subparts of the advance directive, which includes a living will, which includes power of attorney for health care, where you designate someone to make your decisions if you are incapable of making those decisions. And finally, anatomical gifts, whether or not you wish to be an organ donor. Those decisions can't be made if the patient at the end of his or her life is incapacitated. So those best made up front. Okay. The next document is a DNR document, do not resuscitate. So normally, the way that healthcare teams sustain life when there's been a cardiac arrest or a pulmonary arrest, stop breathing, is to do CPR. Everybody knows what CPR is. You may not know how to do it, but you know what CPR is. So the success rate for CPR is certainly a lot better than not having done CPR back in the 70s, 60s and 70s. But the success rate for people who have had a sudden death and are resuscitated by CPR is frighteningly low. Again, the success rate is frighteningly low. Now, if I'm 30 years old and I have a sudden cardiac event, and that does happen, I certainly would want someone to pound on my chest and breathe for me, do CPR. The success rate of a 30-year-old is a lot higher than the success rate of CPR for a 70-year-old or an 80-year-old or a 90-year-old. Remember, we're all terminal. So if you have a loved one who is in their 70s or 80s or 90s, or if you have a loved one who has a terminal condition, a cancer, a kidney failure, a heart failure, dementia could be considered. If that person has a cardiac arrest, it's much better to think about, do I want that person to undergo CPR? Think about it now, then think about it when the event happens. That's what DNR is all about. The success rate of CPR is low, but it can be temporarily successful, meaning you can get the heart started, but the consequences of being without a heartbeat, no oxygen to the brain, is typically devastating because that is not real life. It's not a whole human being. Phil and I had a conversation about this before the class started. I don't want someone to pound on my chest if something happens to me. I'm 72 years old. I'm ready to go. I'm not close to going, but I mean, reality is reality, and I don't want to be left in a vegetative state because CPR was only temporarily successful. You see what my meaning is? So just think about it. That's a question that you and your family members should have, probably not by yourself, but with your physician, in light of other medical problems going on, or with your attorney, or with a social worker from the hospital. Yes?
Would CPR also include being shocked with a I can't remember what they're called, the paddles and all that?
A defibrillator, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of CPR. I mean, CPR initially, before defibrillators were invented, CPR was simply pounding on your chest and doing artificial respirations. Yeah. But now, advanced cardiac life support, ACLU, includes not only CPR, but the use of a defibrillator, which are pretty universally available in the United States. So yeah, it includes defibrillation.
Is the success rate, the long-term success rate any higher with a defibrillator?
It depends on how far away that defibrillator is from where the event happens. It all depends, Kathy, on the length of time between the cardiac arrest and CPR being initiated.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Feel free to ask as we go along.
John, I have a situation. So my mom was critically ill and ended up in nursing. Got to go to a nursing home. She had a DNR, did not want to be. She was elderly in her late 80s. And we had to call the ambulance. They came, said, we want to go to St. Francis. I said, no problem. So my dad and I hopped in the car. Well, we get a phone call. We got to St. Francis, he wasn't there. We got a phone call, and they had to take her to the Southcrest because St. Francis was too busy. And they did shock her. She, we're like, don't do that anymore. Because she definitely did not want that. Is that common, or
So
should you tell the ambulance driver?
communication's the key there.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, the hospital shouldn't be faulted if they didn't know that there was advanced. Yeah, and I know that's not what you're accusing.
No.
It's a matter of not knowing. Remember, a hospital or a healthcare team is going to do everything in their power unless there's a legal document or legal knowledge that they don't have to do that. Because their default is to do everything, which includes shocking, CPR, ventilator, everything. So we're going to talk about the details of the physician, about the PULSE document. But again, that document needs to be available to the people that would provide the care. If they don't have it, if there's knowledge of it. So everybody needs to keep their advance directive and their PULSE document in their back pocket, or tattoos are big these days. So if you want to tattoo it to your chest. I have had patients that had DNR tattooed to their chest.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah.
Or maybe the paperwork has a little card that can be placed in your wallet, and they can see that.
That's true. That is true. If they remember to look in your wallet,
If they do.
they'll be looking for insurance cards. Go ahead. Yes.
In the home setting, home care, we ask them to put it on the refrigerator. But they don't always. It's like at their daughter's house or whatever. I'm thinking, this isn't going to be helpful.
The tragedy is if you go through the process of advanced thinking and have the conversation and have the documents and get them notarized and get them witnessed, and nobody knows about it, or they're not updated. So it should be in your tickler file to update these documents once a year. At least read them. Maybe a family get together and read them. Kind of a morbid event, isn't it? Come on down to Dr. Frame's death class. And
Thanksgiving or Christmas?
Easter wouldn't be appropriate, would it? At some point, maybe a birthday.
So can you tell the ambulance driver that they have one, and do they believe you?
It's not, verbal is not good enough.
Okay.
You got to have the document.
Because St. Francis keeps it on file, because she's been there so long.
So yes, if it's on file at a hospital that you regularly attend,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And anytime someone is admitted to the hospital these days, they will ask you, do you have an advance directive? Do you have a power of attorney? Do you have a DNR? They'll ask those questions, but fresh coming into the emergency room with no warning, they may not have that.
So there's no real sharing between hospital and local facilities. So if St. Francis, any St. Francis, but, if you go to St. John's, there would be no cross knowledge. Jesse?
I'm going to give you a cynical answer that says no, there's no sharing. Ideally, when EMRs, electronic medical records, were invented and went through a standardization process, it was hoped that everybody would be able to share information on John Frame no matter where John Frame went. EMRs are also proprietary pieces of data that a hospital will hold on to because they don't want to share those patients with another hospital.
Right.
Sad. The most widely used EMR is a EMR called Epic. Any hospital that uses Epic will share that information with any other Epic user. It's one of the best advances in healthcare that's happened. So it's possible, Jeff, yes, it's possible that advanced directives, DNRs, Pulse documents, durable power of attorneys that are on the record at one hospital could eventually be shared. Again, though, if an EMSA person shows up to your house, they are not going to have a copy of that record. So on the refrigerator, in your back pocket, a tattoo, wherever, if there's a healthcare crisis happening, I would hope that that would be available to show to the ambulance driver. Yeah. Because that would stop it in its track. But that's the only way it would stop it in its track. A verbal, oh, mama didn't want this, that's not going to do it. Any other questions?
I have one real quick. You said you should review it like periodically, yearly or every year. If you go and look for the Advanced Directive for Healthcare, there must be a dozen or more different ones that are put out by different people. I presume they all say the same, but if you take one and you fill it out and get it notarized and all, does it become invalid after a period of time?
No.
Or can you rely on that as always being effective?
You can rely on whatever.
Which form?
You can rely on whatever form, in whatever way it was filled out, to be forever in force until you change it.
Okay.
Now, you might want to change it because we're going to get into some details of the care that you will or will not accept, and that may change depending on your health care situation.
Okay. But the form you use is going to be good.
If you go online, I put a couple of links in this handout. If you go online and say, I'd like to develop my own advanced directive, you can do that. There's all kinds of sites out there that will be specific to your specific state that you live in. Okay? And it will spit out, for a charge, the advanced directive at the end.
Yeah, and that would be another one. Is one state,
One state is going to be different than another.
but will another state accept one that you've made here in Oklahoma
Yes, ma'am.
in another state?
Yes, they will accept that.
Okay.
But I would make sure that this is, so don't take my word for it, take an attorney's word for it in getting these appropriate forms appropriately filled out and appropriately notarized and or witnessed.
Okay.
Yeah. Other questions? Do any of my attorneys in the room have anything to add?
Just a valid word, like your will, healthcare directive. If it's valid where it's executed, it's valid wherever you may live.
Yes. Jim?
Is there any way to restrict on this organ donation? Can you restrict who your organs go to? Like,
No.
I don't want my organs going to Republicans.
The answer is heck no. Organ donation is done through a shared an organization that equally shares those organs relative to the medical need, not the political persuasion.
Dr. Frame, I'll ask a question. You may have seen this. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal in the last couple of weeks about organs being harvested prematurely. You probably know the thing that I'm talking about. Does that actually happen with any frequency, or does that sell newspapers?
It's all
or-
fake news. No, I'm kidding. It does happen, but I don't think here. I think in other countries it does happen. Those stories can get exaggerated quite easily.
It looks
Yeah,
pretty.
yeah. The final document that I'd like to bring your attention to is called the Oklahoma Physician Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment, or POLST. Now, every state for the last 10 years has come up with their own POLST document. So it is state-specific where it originates. It will be good no matter where you receive your medical care. But this was an effort by a nonprofit organization over the last 10 years to get every state to address this because the advance directive was not specific enough. So if you look at the POLST document, it goes into much more detail that David would address your mom's issue, would address other issues. This is where your health care, it addresses situations where your health care has changed from 2024 to 2025. So you may be much more specific when you review this at Thanksgiving or Christmas or birthdays or Easter, that really things have changed. But in the POLST, it addresses things that were previously addressed in the advanced directive, such as CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. In B, full treatment, limited interventions, and here's where you can be very specific about the interventions that you may or may not want. I don't want to go to surgery. I don't want to be intubated, put on the respirator. I don't want dialysis, et cetera, et cetera. I don't even want antibiotics. You can specify that in the POLST, whereas in the advanced directive, it was much more general in addressing these things. D, assisted nutrition and hydration. TPN is giving total parenteral nutrition, meaning all the calories you need to keep your body going are administered through the vein, through an IV. You can say, I don't want that. But absent a directive like this, TPN would be considered to be given. A feeding tube, a little tube that snakes down your nose into your stomach to give liquid nutrition. Do you want that at the end of your life if you're unable to, if you do not have a reasonable life, lively life left in front of you? Long-term IV fluids. This is a tremendous document to have on hand, especially in a faith-based hospital, because tube feedings, TPN, dialysis, intubation, ventilators would be the standard for everybody in a faith-based hospital until these documents were invented to allow you to direct your care and perhaps limit the care that you want. So
if you fill one of these out, does it override an old advanced directive that you had before?
yes, it would. But I would absolutely have both.
Have both?
I would have both.
Okay.
I sure would. So, durable healthcare power of attorney designates someone else to make decisions on your behalf when you're unable to make decisions. An advanced directive tells them in general what treatment you will or will not accept, which includes CPR, so it would include a DNR. And then the POLST document in Oklahoma is much more specific about what care you would like to have or not have done to you while you're unable to make those decisions. Okay, that's about all I have. I'm sure there are lots of questions. Kathy?
So on the poll, really difficult to answer if you think, if you put yourself in a situation where there's a chance for recovery. Is there a place, I'm not seeing a place on the form that indicates only use these wishes if there's no reasonable chance for recovery.
I think there's room in there for a narrative. If not on the form, it could be an addendum.
Okay,
For example,
oh, yes.
if you have a severe infection, I will consent to 2 rounds of very strong antibiotics. If there's no improvement, I don't want any more. I've seen that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Phil?
It says feeding tube trial period, I can see it going down. How about, is it long-term feeding tube, are they considered PEG?
PEG, yeah. So PEG stands for percutaneous, been retired for 2.5 years, I can't remember. Percutaneous gastrostomy, which is a tube that goes directly into the stomach. So yeah, there is such a thing as a trial period. That's a good point. Trial period for antibiotics, trial period for dialysis, trial period for feeding tubes, trial period for PEG tubes, because people are able to miraculously recover from very, very, very dire situations sometimes. So you don't want to pronounce them dead or hopeless before it's time to do that. But if someone goes into kidney failure because of they had a sudden cardiac arrest and they were resuscitated and they have kidney failure because of the lack of oxygen and blood flow during that time when they were down, there is a possibility that those kidneys are going to recover. But you're going to know that within 3 or 4 weeks. So you can say, I'll do a trial period of dialysis for 3 or 4 weeks. Personally, I would never want to be on dialysis long term. That's my personal opinion. But I would be willing to be on dialysis for 3 or 4 weeks to see if there's a possibility for recovery. A severe pneumonia, severe infections. I'll give a month's worth of antibiotics, but if I'm not recovering, then pancreatic cancer. I am going to accept chemotherapy for 3 courses of chemotherapy, and if there's no improvement, then please no more. So on and so forth.
How much discretion can you give to your spouse in these kinds of circumstances? Because medicine continues to advance so very quickly. What isn't possible today very well might be possible 5 years. And you know that better than any of us. So you want to use the reasonableness standard at the time of the event, which may be likely from when it was drawn to begin with.
Well, the first thing that has to happen is your spouse needs to have that durable healthcare power of attorney. That document needs to be in place. If you're still cognizant, if you still have all your wits about you and you're faced with a life-ending situation, if you're still able to make those decisions, then you make those decisions in consulting with your physician or your healthcare team. It's when you become incompetent, unable to make those decisions, that those decisions need to be turned over to the durable healthcare power of attorney designee, your spouse or whomever. Does that answer your question?
I think so. So they have a fairly wide berth of capability under the directive.
Yeah, especially if you have that POLST document in place or the advanced directive in place, there's going to be enough, with discussion, enough leeway that you and your spouse, in your example, have discussed to say, gosh, if I'm stricken with XYZ, here's what I would really like for the end of my life.
Right.
So, David.
This may be a question for the attorneys, but you may know the answer. So I've got all this stuff, and it's in my lockbox at the bank. Should I give it to my kids? Make copies?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Have it on file, a digital copy.
And I think my copy. Do y'all, doctors?
Right here
Really?
is your portable file.
Really?
If you have a digital copy on your phone and it's possible to do that, that's all you have to do, hand it to whomever.
Good idea, yeah.
Another easy way to access your documents that's not a problem at all, you don't have to have a lawyer, is we have a file on every single member of the church. It's a hard copy file, they're in locked file cabinets at my office, and there are people who do have documents in those files that will be very easily accessed if needed.
That'd be great in a stabilized situation, but in
Not in an emergency.
an emergency ambulance, EMSA situation, that's going to be you're going to be limited. So the phone may be your issue, but as many copies as you could get out there. I've got copies of a file that I have created that my wife Kitty has a copy, my daughter has a copy, and I term that survivor instructions, and that gives them instructions as far as my living will, my durable health care power of attorney, my pulse document, my bank accounts, all this stuff that they'd have to take care of if something happens to me. So all of that can be put together, David, in one packet that would be very, very helpful to your family members that are going to have to take care of you.
Yeah, I'd have to go get my wife. Where's Kitty? We don't know.
I forgot.
I'll tell you where that is. It's on the house.
Yes.
I use an app called Cam Scanner. It's a free app, and you can even have everything, even including all of if you have assets and stocks and stuff like that as well in there, and it's like it doesn't run out of space. So it's something to look into.
Can you talk a little more about standards of care with faith-based hospitals versus one that's not?
I'm going to be a little bit sarcastic, Jeff, but I worked at St. Francis I was based there for about 25 years. For so long, until these documents came about where you can really be specific about what you want, it was just flog, 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 keep going, keep going, keep going, don't give up. And they're adhering to the sacredness of life. I understand that. But we believe that we're all terminal, and it's a transition. But it's really changed now that there are such documents that really outline what the patient wishes are. Remember that first medical principle is autonomy. The patient gets to decide, not the Pope and not the hospital administrator, but the patient gets to decide what care he or she wants. That's how, in my brief career, that's a momentous change that happened. It's a great question. Great question.
What I ran into was that even though Michael had a DNR, they still waited for my response on whether or not I wanted to use the DNR or not, or to go ahead and try to resuscitate him or to accept the DNR, which I thought was strange, that they still gave the wife a decision.
My plea to everybody that has someone in the hospital with a serious, potentially life-ending situation is have that discussion right away with the care team. The communication may get lost, but it's more likely to be followed if you have that discussion up front. That's what this death class is all about. Yeah. The staff named it, I didn't.
I'm innocent.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple of things. One is, I know a gentleman that was a member of this church, Fred Fulkerson, who I don't know, I think he was in his 90s when he passed, but I know he had resuscitation at least a couple of different times and went on fine for years between.
Like fine or
Yeah,
alive fine?
No, he was here, taking part in everything. He was doing, well, for 80 some years old or 90 some years old, he was doing, well. And I also have a friend that I knew for years who had leukemia, had a bone marrow transplant. The medications fried his liver, so he had the liver transplant. And then all the medications got to his kidneys, but he was on dialysis for, I know, a good 15 years or more. And he would go 3 times a week, but in between his 3 days, he was doing what he wanted to do. Now, he was not in great health. I mean, he was fragile, but he went on an awful long time doing that dialysis.
I would say that both of those
Yeah,
examples, I'm happy for both of those examples,
but it's
but
kinda
those are exceptions to the rule.
And then the
Yeah.
other thing is, I've looked at, or done some of these, I have the directive, the advanced directive done. But then I had something that's called a springing durable power of attorney. And that thing covered both your financial, naming somebody to take care of finances if you're incapacitated, and medical. And then you have the actual durable power of attorney for health care, which is strictly, I think, just the medical issues, your attorney, in fact.
I'll turn the microphone over to Mr. Rounds to answer that question.
Those be conflicting.
I don't know. Don't know the detail. I don't even know what that document is. But that is something that would clearly intersect between healthcare people, legal people, and estate planning people.
That's a question that's not directly related, but I just saw this, and you probably saw it too. Under traditional government Medicare versus an Advantage plan, there wasn't the pre-authorization process in the same way. But I guess there's a set number of procedures now. It sounded like in certain markets where it is going to go through with traditional pre-authorization, I don't know if anybody's seen that, but that's a pretty substantial change. Maybe you could speak to that just in general.
I hate healthcare insurance.
I've never met a doctor who likes it.
Because you see what I think they're trying to do, which would be to mirror the private Advantage model about pre-auths required, wait periods and whatever.
In my humble opinion, though I think I'm really right on this, the pre-authorization process adds millions and millions of dollars to the cost of your health care. And the only reason to do it is to limit the number of procedures that are being done.
Yeah.
In other words, they're taking, I could go on and on and on. They're taking the decision about what is necessary in health care.
Away from the doctor.
Yeah, and they're putting it in an administrator's,
That's what I think.
in a clerk's decision mode from some manual. And I'll give you an example. When I was taking care of breast cancer patients, a newly diagnosed breast cancer patient needs an MRI, right?
Sure.
She does. So
Duh.
it took 2 weeks to get Blue Cross Blue Shield said, well, we have 2 weeks to make that decision.
Right.
They never turned a single one down. And yet that lady was left in 2 weeks of limbo, wondering what in the world is going to happen to me.
Right.
That is criminal as far as I'm concerned. Other than that, I have no feelings about the matter.
Maybe right off it, but
Yeah. So pretty much outside the scope of the death class here.
right.
But
But
yeah,
another layer of complication
Yeah,
when you're making
right.
these decisions. and
right.
It's complicated.
Anybody else? All right. Ron Pearson is waiting for me to get up to choir.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for being here. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but we got through it.
We all understand.
Yes. And before we adjourn, Kathy's gonna just give some highlights of what's coming.
Just a quick overview of the next 4 sessions of this class, apparently named the death class now. That's gonna be hard to live down. So the next session will hopefully deal with some of the questions that came up tonight, which is Bob Ferris will be, he is very legally astute, will be leading us in legal matters, some of which will touch on what John covered tonight, but it'll go into some of the other questions that are more geared toward legal. And then the third session will be myself, and it'll also be Cassandra from Stanley's Funeral Home. We'll be talking about how to handle what happens when somebody passes away, what happens from that point on, and how do you plan a service. It's one of those things that people tell me, I've never done this before. That's a wonderful thing if you've never done it before, but it's really good to have an idea of what you're doing before then, or have the person that you love tell you some of the things they'd like to see happen in their service, within the limitations of what the church can do, of course. And then the next session will be on caregiving, and that's going to cover from the caregiver's point of view, how to tips and resources for people in a caregiving situation, but it will also cover ways the caregiver can care for themselves. Because I don't know if you've seen the stats in terms of health repercussions for caregivers, but they're really scary. It is a very difficult thing to do. It takes a lot of caregivers actually don't survive the caregiving experience. So it's really important to be aware of the options you have as a caregiver to take care of yourself so you can continue to care for your loved one. And then the last session will be resources of the church, and in the community we'll be having the different ministries in the church that are geared toward grief counseling, not counseling, but grief recovery, fellowship, things like that. Plus, we're hoping to have Life Senior Services come and share some of their resources, which are pretty impressive. So that's a great resource, is Life Senior Services of Tulsa. So that, keep coming, because this is just the beginning. Thanks for being here. Oh,